Have you ever seen someone smile in public and break in private? Everyone saw the CEO at the Coldplay concert, laughing, shining, holding hands with a woman who looked like the perfect match. But no one saw the tear that slipped during Fix You. No one saw the one woman watching from the shadows, the one who knew the truth behind the show. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't posted online. They're buried in silence. It was supposed to be just another dazzling night at the stadium, Coldplay under the stars, lights painting the sky, and a crowd roaring with joy. But that evening, something else stole the spotlight. As cameras panned across the VIP section, there he was, Daniel Hartman, the elusive CEO who rarely showed up in public. Seated beside a woman no one recognized. Phones lit up instantly. Whispers turned to waves of speculation. Who is she? Is this his girlfriend? They look too close. The moment went viral before the second chorus of Yellow even began. Everyone sighed with her. The charm, the easy laughs, the subtle touch on her arm. It was a performance within a performance. But none of it was real. Daniel leaned in close, smiling like a man who'd just fallen in love. But behind the cameras, behind that practiced smile, something cracked. She looked perfect, too perfect, as if rehearsed. She wore elegance like armor, but her eyes never once softened toward him. She wasn't there for music or magic. She was there to be seen. That single public appearance set the internet on fire. Headlines and rumors filled every entertainment blog by midnight. Billionaire CEO spotted with mysterious beauty at Coldplay concert. Social media cloded, dissecting every frame. And just like that, the narrative had been chosen. Love, success, glamour. But it was a lie. What the cameras missed was the slight stiffness in Daniel's shoulders, the way his jaw tightened each time she laughed too loudly. No one noticed how often he checked his phone under the table, or how he barely touched his drink. It wasn't affection, it was a mask, one he was tired of wearing. Somewhere in that massive crowd, another pair of eyes watched it all unfold. Eyes that once looked at Daniel like he was more than his name or his money. She saw everything. The gestures, the illusion, the emotional betrayal wrapped in lights, cameras, and deception. And she knew exactly what he had just destroyed. The woman he couldn't forget wasn't seated beside him. She wasn't in the VIP lounge, and she definitely wasn't part of the show. She was somewhere in the shadows, quietly breaking apart. Because she had believed in something real, and he'd chosen a lie. A fake relationship over quiet love. Fame over truth. Daniel had made his choice. Or so it seemed. But sometimes, the price of betrayal isn't paid in headlines. It's paid in silent tears and the sound of your own name spoken in past tense. That night, he broke more than a heart. He broke a promise. One that wasn't written in ink, but etched into trust. There's something haunting about watching someone you love become a stranger in front of the world. She never said a word. She walked away silently, refusing to feed the fire of rumors. But inside she knew, this wasn't just a public humiliation. It was the end of something sacred. Not every story begins with a kiss. Some begin with a crowd cheering for a song, while one heart shatters quietly in the dark. And Daniel, lost in the sound of applause and artificial laughter, didn't even realize he had just lost the one who truly loved him. But under all that noise, beneath the lights and illusion, one truth remained untouched. A truth that couldn't be posted online or captured in a selfie. And it was about to turn his world upside down. Daniel Hartman wasn't born into money, but by 35, he had more than most men could even dream of. A sharp mind, a calculated charm, and a reputation for turning failing companies into gold. Wall Street admired him. Forbes celebrated him. But no one ever asked about the cost. And Daniel never offered the receipts. Behind the boardroom brilliance and five-star hotel rooms, there was a man who used success as a shield. Every tailored suit, every perfect quote in an interview, it all masked something he never truly faced. He had built an empire, yes, but he'd done it while burying a part of himself too deep to dig out again. There was a time when he used to laugh without thinking, when music played from his car speakers instead of conference calls. That version of Daniel had once fallen in love, the raw, unpolished kind, with someone who never asked for anything but his time, his honesty, and his hand to hold. Her name was Emily. She was everything the world didn't expect for a man like him. Quiet, grounded, a bit messy in the most beautiful way. They met before the fame, before the headlines. She saw him when he was just a man trying to figure life out, and he saw her like a lighthouse through fog. But power changes people, or maybe it just reveals who they've been avoiding becoming. As his name climbed the lists and his bank accounts grew, so did the walls around his heart. And Emily, who once sat with him in diners and laughed at his terrible impressions, slowly became collateral damage. She loved him for who he was, not for what he owned. And that terrified him more than he cared to admit. Because when someone sees all of you, the cracks, the fear, the doubts, you either hold on to them with everything you've got, or you run. Daniel ran. He buried himself in numbers, deals, and high-rise views. He told himself he was doing it for the future. But deep down he knew. He had broken her heart, not with words, but with silence. With absence. With every maybe later and I'm too busy right now. People close to Daniel called him focused, determined, visionary. But they didn't see the late nights when he stared at his phone and didn't dare dial. Or the way he still kept Emily's favorite book in his top drawer, untouched but never moved. Quiet love lingers, even when pride says it's gone. Every now and then, during charity galas or stockholder speeches, he'd catch himself looking for her in the crowd, knowing she'd never be there, but still hoping. That's the thing about real love versus fake love. One haunts you, even when the other is screaming for attention. He could have had a different life, a simpler one. One where Emily didn't have to walk away with dignity, and he didn't have to wonder every day what might have been. But choices, once made, echo, and Daniel's were loud enough to fill every silent space she left behind. And now, as the world praised his public appearance with a stranger, the man behind the mask began to feel the weight of everything he had built, and everything he had buried to get there. Before there were headlines, there was just a small corner office and a girl with ink on her fingers. Emily had started as a part-time assistant in Daniel's early first days, the kind of job no one notices until the person doing it disappears. But Daniel noticed her on day one. She wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but there was a quiet strength in her that disarmed him. While others chased titles, she stayed late to help him rewrite pitch decks, sometimes bringing dinner from the little Cuban place downstairs. She believed in him when investors laughed behind his back. They shared cheap coffee and long glances. Nothing was official, not at first. It was love behind the scenes, the kind that unfolds in late-night chats, in shared umbrella walks, in silence they feel safe. Emily saw the man, not the ambition, and for a while, that was enough. But success is a strange amplifier. It doesn't change people, it just turns up the volume. As Daniel rose, the room around him changed. Fancy assistants replaced loyal ones. Board members sneered at her simplicity. "She's just a temp," someone once whispered. That sentence hit him harder than a stock crash. Emily never asked to belong to his world. She just wanted to be seen in it. But the more cameras pointed at him, the more invisible she became. Not because she faded, but because he stopped looking. In the echo chamber of fame, he forgot the sound of her laugh. She kept showing up, quietly fixing the messes others made. She didn't cry at the office. She didn't beg him to stay. She simply waited for him to remember who he was before the lights. But Daniel, blinded by his own rise, didn't notice when her desk was finally cleared. He didn't read the letter she left on his chair, not until weeks later. And by then she was gone. A job offer in another city. A new apartment with no traces of him. She didn't make a scene. She never said a word to the press. She just disappeared. But not from his heart. No matter how many public appearances he staged, how many glamorous women smiled for the cameras beside him, none of them held his soul the way Emily did. She was the unspoken truth, the invisible pain he carried in every untouched drink and every empty bed. The woman in the headlines wasn't the one who helped him build a foundation. She didn't know his first failure, his trials and fears, or the way he liked his coffee when he couldn't sleep. Emily did, and that made her dangerous. Because she was real. You see, some people live in the spotlight. Others live in the heart. Emily never chased fame. She just loved him fully in a world that rewards filters over feelings. And Daniel let her go thinking he'd have time. But healing from heartbreak isn't something you schedule. Now, with her name missing from every news article, he realized the silence she left behind spoke louder than any headline ever could. The night before the Coldplay concert wasn't supposed to change anything. Daniel had planned a quiet evening. No flash, no cameras, just him and Emily in that little rooftop spot she loved. She had no idea he still remembered it. But he did. Every detail, every breeze that carried her laughter years ago. He had asked to see her. After all that time, he wanted to say the things he never could. To admit he had made the wrong choice, that he missed her, not just in memory, but in soul. She was hesitant, unsure whether to open a door that had been shut so carefully. But Emily said yes, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of hope. She showed up with that same quiet grace, the one that never needed designer labels to shine. She sat across from him, and for a moment, they were just two people trying to find their way back to each other. Daniel didn't waste time. He looked her in the eyes and said, "I'm done pretending. I want something real again. I want you." It wasn't a performance. It was raw, vulnerable. The CEO mask had cracked, and beneath it was the man she once trusted. Emily listened, and for the first time in years, he saw her soften. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She only asked one thing: honesty. "Don't make promises you're not ready to keep, Daniel. I can't do another broken promise." He promised, quietly but firmly. No more secrets, no more appearances that didn't reflect his heart. She deserved better, and he said it like he meant it. Emily left that night with something she hadn't carried in a long time: cautious hope. But somewhere between that rooftop and the concert dates, something shifted. A last-minute call, a PR crisis, and a team of advisors who didn't care about quiet love. They cared about headlines, image, and numbers. They pitched the idea: a dazzling companion for the show, a staged appearance to boost stocks. Daniel hesitated, but only for a second. That second cost him everything. He told himself it was just business, a fake relationship, a harmless photo op. Emily would never know. But deep down, he knew he had chosen wrong again. Emily didn't need confirmation. When she saw the first photos go live, him smiling beside another woman, the answer was clear. Everyone saw the lie. But only she knew what had been shattered just hours before. The unspoken truth between them was now bleeding across 1,000 screens. She didn't cry. Not in front of anyone. She simply turned off her phone and walked away. Letting go with love is a kind of strength people rarely notice. And that night, she became invisible again, but stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Daniel was applauded under stadium lights, unaware that he'd just lost the only thing that had ever made him feel human. The moment went viral, but what it caused couldn't be captured in any photo. The lights dimmed. The first notes of "Fix You" floated into the air like smoke in a cathedral. And for a moment, even the crowd of thousands fell into silence. But no silence could compare to the one Daniel felt, sitting beside a woman he didn't love, pretending everything was fine. He should have felt powerful. He was front row at one of the biggest concerts of the year, seated like royalty. Flashbulbs lit up around him. The public appearance had worked. Headlines and rumors were already flooding social media. Yet Daniel sat frozen in the middle of his own lie. The woman next to him, perfectly styled, professionally chosen, leaned in with a camera-ready smile. Her laugh was soft but empty. She was playing her part. So was he. But as Chris Martin's voice broke through the stadium, something inside Daniel cracked wider than ever before. He glanced toward the far end of the crowd, instinctively. She wasn't there. He knew she wouldn't be. But he looked anyway, like a man scanning for the last bus after midnight, knowing it's already gone. Emily was nowhere to be seen. And yet, somehow, she was everywhere in his mind. As the song reached its quiet climax, Daniel felt a sting he hadn't expected. His eyes burned. He tried to blink it away, tried to straighten his spine like always, but it was no use. A single tear rolled down his cheek, too slow to hide, too honest to excuse. The cameras missed it, but someone else didn't. Emily had come after all, not to be seen, but to see for herself. She stood tucked away in the shadows, far from the noise, wrapped in a coat that somehow felt heavier than before. When that tear fell, she saw it, and for a fleeting moment, her own breath caught. It wasn't the tear that moved her. It was the timing. The song, their song. The one that once played on the scratch CD during a power outage when they danced by candlelight. That night lived in her bones. And now it echoed like a ghost he wasn't ready to face. She could have stormed out. She could have made a fiend. But she didn't. Quiet love doesn't compete with loud lies. Instead, she turned away, again, carrying the invisible pain that fame never has to answer for. She never said a word. Meanwhile, Daniel sat under the stadium lights, more exposed than he'd ever been, and no one knew. The world cheered for his curated illusion, oblivious to the regret that hit harder than the bass lines shaking the ground. He had it all, but not her. The cameras caught his smile, but not the way he gripped the armrest just to stay upright. They missed the tremble in his fingers, the haunted flicker in his eyes. That moment, that song, wasn't part of the plan. It broke him open in the most unexpected way. And still, no one asked the question that mattered. Why was the man who had everything suddenly crying during Fix You? Because sometimes the loudest breakdowns happen in silence. And the deepest losses are the ones no one posts online. Behind every smile on that stage was a signature, a contract buried in legal terms and non-disclosure clauses. The woman seated beside Daniel wasn't there for romance. She was there for optics. The strategic move, approved by PR, designed to soften his image and sell a narrative. Her name was Scarlett Monroe, model, influencer, brand ambassador. She'd been seen with athletes, musicians, and now a billionaire CEO. But nothing stuck, because nothing was real. She was the face of 1,000 fake relationships. And Daniel knew it the moment she stepped into the room. The deal was simple. One high-profile appearance, a few staged photos, and a short-lived buzz on social media. In return, she'd promote his upcoming business venture subtly across her platforms. A modern-day arrangement of mutual gain. But emotions were never supposed to get involved. Daniel agreed reluctantly. The Coldplay concert was the perfect backdrop, nostalgic, cinematic, and loud enough to drown out his own doubts. Just smile, Daniel, they told him. Pretend you're happy. That's all the audience wants. But no one asked what his heart wanted. Scarlett did her job well. She laughed on cue, leaned close when the camera zoomed in, and whispered sweet nothings that meant absolutely nothing. Lights, cameras, dissection. The whole night played like a scripted drama, and the audience ate it up. What they didn't see was the moment backstage, when Daniel excused himself and stared at his reflection in the mirror, questioning how he got there. This wasn't love. It wasn't even a shadow of it. It was survival, a transaction dressed in silk and smiles. Scarlett knew the rules. You're not the first man trying to fix an image, she said, adjusting her earring with a knowing smirk. But you are the first one who looks like he's about to break from pretending. Her words cut deeper than she intended. Daniel didn't respond. Because what could he say? That the woman he should have brought with watching from the dark? That he'd exchanged the one who truly loved him for a press package? That he'd become the story he once swore he'd never be? This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was betrayal against himself. Every part of the night, from the limo to the lighting, screamed success. But deep inside, regret was beginning to scream louder. And in a cruel twist of irony, the more perfect the images appeared, the more broken he felt behind them. The price of betrayal isn't always paid in headlines. Sometimes it's a quiet realization in a hotel suite at midnight, when the cameras are gone, and the only person left to answer to is yourself. Daniel had sealed the deal, but sold a piece of his soul. And as Scarlett scrolled through their photos that night, counting likes and brand tags, Daniel stared at his phone again. No new messages, no missed calls. Just a single old photo of Emily, smiling with wind in her hair. The kind of smile that couldn't be staged. Emily never liked competition. She wasn't built for games, for battles, or for chasing attention. Her love had always been quiet, steady like a lighthouse, not a flare. And that's why, when she saw the headlines and rumors after the concert, she didn't fight back. She simply stepped aside. It wasn't surrender. It was self-respect. Real love versus fake love isn't about who wins the spotlight. It's about who knows their worth without needing applause. Emily didn't need validation from strangers. She just needed honesty. And Daniel couldn't give her that. People expected a scene, a confrontation. But Emily was never the type to scream in the rain or show up uninvited. She chose silence. A powerful silence. The kind that says, if I have to fight to matter to you, I've already lost. The night after the concert, she packed a small box of things she hadn't yet thrown away. A letter he once wrote. A photo of their first trip. The Coldplay ticket stub from years ago. She didn't rip them. She placed them carefully in a drawer she never planned to open again. Letting go with love is harder than holding on out of pride. But she did it. Not because she stopped caring, but because she knew she deserved better. Emily didn't want to be the other woman in someone else's image management strategy. She wanted to be the only one in a real story. She thought of texting him. Just one line. I saw. But what would that change? He saw her pain and still made the choice. Everyone saw the lie, but only she carried the invisible pain. That kind of betrayal doesn't need a reply. It leaves its own echo. She walked through the city streets the next morning, like any other day. No makeup, no headlines, no followers tracking her steps. But she carried something Daniel would never have again. Quiet strength. The kind that comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. Daniel hadn't reached out. Maybe he thought she'd wait again. But this time, Emily was done waiting. True love isn't a waiting room. It's a mirror. And when she looked at herself now, she no longer saw a woman hoping for scraps. She saw someone rising from the wreckage with grace. Friends asked her what happened. She smiled and shrugged. He made his choice. That was all she said, and that was enough. Because sometimes dignity is louder than revenge. And Emily had no interest in proving anything to anyone. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a rival. She was simply the woman who loved deeply and refused to shrink to fit a place she was never meant to occupy. And in a world obsessed with validation, her silence became the loudest truth of all. Still, far away in his glass penthouse, Daniel couldn't sleep. Because while the world praised his curated love story, the one woman who truly mattered had vanished. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. And he had no idea how to find her again. Regret doesn't always roar. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, like the hum of an empty apartment after the guests are gone. That's what Daniel felt in the days following the Coldplay concert. The buzz faded, the headlines cooled, but the silence, that only grew louder. He returned to his penthouse surrounded by art and glass, but none of it felt like home. Scarlett had moved on, back to her brand deals and events, as if nothing had happened. Because for her, nothing had. It was just another job. For him, it was a mistake he couldn't undo. He kept checking his phone, scrolling through old messages with Emily. Most were simple. Did you eat? You okay? Don't forget to sleep. It hit him then, how loved he had been in the smallest ways. And how blind he'd been chasing the biggest spotlight. People still called him a visionary, still invited him to speak at conferences. But when he stepped onto stages now, he felt hollow. He used to light up a room. Now he just filled it with noise. Because when you've tasted true love, applause feels like static. Daniel began visiting places they once shared. The cafe where they used to sit in the back. The bookstore where she'd read aloud just to make him laugh. The cashier recognized him, but said nothing. Only offered a sad smile, as if she already knew. He sat there for hours, watching strangers pass, hoping she might walk in again like she used to. Messy hair, coffee-stained notebook, unaware of how beautiful she looked when she wasn't trying. But she never came. And each empty chair became a mirror of what he'd lost. He tried reaching out once, typed and deleted the message over and over. What do you say to the woman you broke without touching? I'm sorry felt too small. I miss you felt selfish. In the end, he sent nothing, because even he knew healing takes time. At night, he dreamed of her, not in dramatic scenes, but in quiet ones. Her reading by the window, her humming while folding laundry, her voice saying his name like it meant something. He'd wake up aching, not for sex, not for passion, but for presence, for home. He started turning down interviews, skipped gala invitations. He wasn't hiding, he was unraveling. Because regret hits harder than fame when you realize the one who truly loved you isn't watching anymore. She moved on, and you're stuck in a reel of memories no one else can see. Daniel had it all. Money, respect, recognition. But he didn't have Emily. And now he finally understood. He had lost the one who mattered. Not because she left, but because he gave her every reason to. But regret, if you let it, can be a door. And Daniel, broken in ways no camera could catch her, was about to decide whether he'd knock or keep staring at it from the outside. Redemption doesn't come dressed in fanfare. It comes quietly, through actions that don't need to be announced. Daniel knew that now. If he wanted any chance of reclaiming what he lost, he'd have to do more than apologize. He'd have to become someone worth forgiving. It started with small things. He removed the stage photos from his social media, archived the PR campaigns, and canceled a major event his team had been planning for months. His advisors panicked. "This isn't good for your image," they warned. But Daniel wasn't chasing image anymore. He began showing up at the community center Emily used to volunteer at. Not as a CEO, not with cameras. Just as a man trying to understand who he used to be when she first fell in love with him. He painted walls, served meals, folded clothes. No one knew his name, and for once, that felt good. One afternoon, he found her notebook on a shelf in the donation room. Her name inside the cover, her handwriting still familiar. Don't forget to be kind, especially when it's hard. It wasn't meant for him, but it pierced him anyway. She had left pieces of herself in places he never bothered to look before. Daniel didn't try to contact her yet. Not until he had something real to offer. Not just regret. Not just words, but proof. He started therapy, something he dismissed for years, and slowly, layer by layer, the man she once loved began to return. Months passed. The world moved on. But Daniel hadn't. He wasn't waiting. He was working on himself, on becoming someone who didn't just feel love, but honored it, who didn't run from vulnerability, but embraced it like a long-lost friend. Then, one morning, he saw her at a bookstore downtown, holding a coffee and flipping through pages with that same soft concentration. He didn't approach. He just watched. And in that moment, he understood something. She looked okay. Not broken. Not waiting, just okay. It crushed him, but it also humbled him. True love doesn't always mean a second chance. Sometimes it means letting someone go and hoping they're happier without you. But Daniel wasn't ready to walk away again. Not without trying. Not this time. He wrote her a letter. No flowers, no gifts, no grand gesture. Just ink and truth. He told her about the rooftop. About the tear at the concert, about the changes. Not for show, but for real. He ended it with one line. "You don't owe me anything, but I owe you everything." He mailed it without expectations, without hope, even. He just needed her to know that she hadn't loved in vain, that her quiet strength had changed him in ways no fortune ever could. And somewhere in a quiet apartment across the city, Emily read those words. And for the first time in months, she didn't cry. She smiled. There was no announcement, no dramatic reunion in front of cameras, no viral photo with captions like "Love wins." The truth of what happened between Daniel and Emily never made it online, because some stories are too sacred for hashtags. Weeks after he sent the letter, Daniel received a call. Unknown number. Her voice came through, calm and steady. "I read it," she said. Nothing more. But in that moment, Daniel felt more seen than in any boardroom or spotlight he'd ever stepped into. They met at the same rooftop. No flash, no audience. Just the city lights and the hum of traffic below. Emily didn't run into his arms. She didn't cry. She listened. And when he spoke, she watched his eyes, not his hands, to see if he meant it. He didn't beg. He didn't promise forever. He just told the truth. That he missed her. That he'd changed, not for her, but because of her. That everything he built meant nothing if he couldn't chat with someone who loved him for who he really was. Emily was quiet, Then she asked the only question that mattered. Are you done pretending? Daniel nodded. That's when she smiled. Not the kind you fake for photos, but the kind that makes a man feel like maybe, just maybe, he still had a soul. They didn't post a picture that night. They didn't tell anyone. Because real love doesn't need to prove itself to strangers. It lives in private gestures, in slow forgiveness, in two people choosing each other quietly after the noise has died down. Over time, they started seeing each other again. Slowly, carefully. Healing isn't a montage. It's awkward pauses, relearning trust, and laughing again when you least expect it. They weren't trying to go back to what they were. They were building something new. The world kept watching Daniel, waiting for a new public appearance, a new face beside him. But it never came. Instead, people noticed he looked lighter, less polished, more human. He stopped showing off, started showing up. Emily never posted about them. Her page stayed full of books, coffee, and sunrises. But once, quietly, she shared a quote. Some love stories aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be lived. No one knew what it meant, except him. The love that stayed hidden and finally found its place. Not in tabloids, but in truth. In quiet mornings, inside jokes, and the silence that no longer hurt. He had broken her once. But love stronger than pride had rebuilt something unexpected. And so the world kept scrolling, kept speculating. But the truth? Truth licked off screen. In the story no one posted, but both of them finally believed in again. Some love stories don't need a spotlight. They just need two people brave enough to be honest, even after everything's fallen apart. Daniel had the world in his hands, but none of it mattered without the woman who loved him before the world even knew his name. Emily never wanted fame. She wanted truth. And when that finally came, it didn't arrive with flowers. It arrived with change. Quiet, painful, real change. That's what made this story different. Not the betrayal, not the lies, but the courage to face them and choose something better. And you, what would you do if the person you loved broke your heart in front of a world? Would you walk away in silence or wait for the redemption no one believed in? Tell me in the comments, do you think Daniel deserved a second chance? And if you love stories like this, real, raw, and filled with heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more coming that'll make you feel and remember.